Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Yak Gadget. For all your kayak fishing accessory needs, go to yakgadget.com. Pelican cases, coolers, and lighting. Go to pelican.com. The 153 Bait Company. For all your hard and soft bait needs, go to the153anglers.com. Now let's get this show started.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mindset Podcast on the Paddle and Fin Network. I'm your host, Chris Slifka. Joining me, special guest Susie Roloff. And we'll be talking today a little bit about the mindset of what you do as a, tournament director, basically. And all that kind of goes into it, like the behind the scenes, what people really don't see. You know, a lot of people just see the outcome of it and basically the end result, whether good or bad, and nobody sees what really goes into it. So I kind of wanted to dig into that today. But first, if you want to just introduce yourself for the people who don't know.
All right, so hey everybody, Susie Susie Roloff here. I have about 7-8 years of kayak fishing under my belt. I've been part of staff and tournament director for probably 5.5-6 years of that 7 years. I kind of dove in headfirst in the deep end, doing behind the scenes stuff and everything. And that's just kind of how I've gotten into it and learned from everything. But I used to be tournament director of Great Lakes Kayak Fishing Series. And then I stepped down from that one last year. I've been with Kayak Bass League for quite a while, and then this year was my first year with the Paddle and Fin Trail Series as their TD. So, I've done a couple of other little things too. The last 2 years, I was tournament director for the Crossroads Kayak Fishing Championship, which has definitely had some interesting things happen with it. I've had some pretty interesting experiences, not just as a tournament director or staff member, but as a angler as well. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Yeah. So with all your extensive, knowledge of tournament directing, the first thing I want is, what's the mindset going, like at the beginning of the year, picking out the schedule? What do you go through like first? Kind of.
So it actually happens before the beginning of the year. So right now we are like a little bit over halfway out of September. Coming up here in October, November, a lot of different trails and series and stuff like that are going to be coming out with their schedules for next year. So, it depends on a couple of different factors. So there's a couple of different things, like if your state, Illinois for one of them, Illinois, you cannot put your permits in until, I believe it's January. No, actually it's November. That's right. Theirs is different. It's like November 1st or something like that is when you can put your permits in. And with the state of Illinois, you can only have a max of 50 people at any launch. So there's two different variables there as well. Whereas Wisconsin, you can't put your permits in until, I think it's like March 31st or something like that. So you have to wait quite a while for that. And then you have to wait for them to get back with you on whether or not your permit is approved or not. So before you can even release your definite schedule, you have to wait for permits to go through. You have to, go through all of those processes. Illinois, you don't have to pay anything for those. Wisconsin, you do have to pay a fee. And you also have to submit your tournament results for Wisconsin and for Illinois as well within a certain time frame as well. Now, for other states, they run a little bit differently. Michigan is actually pretty user-friendly. They have a website you can go to, and you can just do it all online. Wisconsin, I think they can do it online, or I think I'm pretty sure you have to mail it in. So you have to like write everything down, and then you have to mail it in, and then you have to wait for them to process it. And then once they processed it, they'll go into your profile, and then you'll get a response back saying that, they've received your tournament review, and then they'll allow you to apply for permits for the next year type of thing. Same thing with Illinois. If you don't have your permit or your tournament results submitted by October 31st, you can't apply for permits for the next year, and so on and so forth. So there are some different conditions and requirements that you have to meet to fill out permits, depending, again, on the state and whatnot. So those are kind of the first things that you're looking at. And then second of all, you're going to be looking at, all these big trails, where they have in their events. Are you wanting to conflict with them to just do your own thing, and whoever shows up, or are you trying to avoid their schedules, so that you can have more people come to your event, as opposed to losing, 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20 people to some of these bigger trail series. So you got to be watching out for their different schedules. And then, it's not even the bigger trails anymore. Now you have a couple of different local trails that might be coming around. Here in the Midwest, we've got several different leagues going on. There's Gerby, there's Southern Illinois Kayak, there's Great Lakes, there's like 4 or 5 Wisconsin trails now, and then Michigan, my gosh, I think they have like 6 or 7 different branches now. So, there's a lot of different coordinating with all these different clubs and series. You're like, all right, let's talk schedules. Are we going to conflict with each other, or are we going to like join together and have like one big event with both clubs type of thing? So, which can sometimes work out for the best, because the more people you have, sometimes the bigger payouts you can have with that as well. So, a couple other things that you're looking to as well is, figuring out who is all going to be on your staff again for the year. Thinking about where you're going to have your tournaments for the next year. Are you going to have it in the same places? Are you going to try to mix it up and go to different lakes or rivers, that type of thing. And with sponsors as well, usually by October, at least with some bigger sponsors, they're already locking in their, monetary value that they're going to give out, either product and money wise or gift certificate wise, to some of these clubs and trails. So if you are already on the ball, you're going to miss out on some of the bigger stuff that a lot of these companies can give you. So it's already happened before the start of the year. And, we're only in September right now. So we're like, all right, we got to get these things in, before October, sometimes November, that type of thing. It's like, well, these big trails haven't even put out their, schedule yet. So you're just like, you got all these different things that you're planning for in the background. So before even the beginning of the year, you're probably already got almost half of your stuff somewhat planned out for the next year. So,
it's crazy to think about, because the Paddle and Fin Trail Series just ended like 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And we're already thinking about next year.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And just a lot of things, that people sometimes don't think about, because next weekend is the Crossroads event. And then Hobie's having their Tournament of Champions coming up. And then the KBF National Championship is coming up in October. Again, you've got a lot of these things that are wrapping up, but also at the same time, that these clubs are already planning for next year because they have to.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people are just like, oh, yeah, when are you going to come out with the schedules? When are you going to come out with the schedules? Well, it depends on a lot of factors. You got to coordinate with all these different people. You got to wait for permits. You got to wait for that, and that's why a lot of times some of these club and trails have a tentative schedule, because a lot of these things are out of their hands. So, yeah.
Well, a lot of the Wisconsin stuff, if you can't put in until March, then you guys are kind of setting a date and hoping to stick to it, or?
Yeah, and most likely when it comes to Wisconsin, I've never known of a tournament application to be denied, especially when it comes to like the kayak trails. Yeah. When I put in for the paddle and fin one, the guy who approved it, he came back and asked me a bunch of questions. He's like, because their online application process, it's pretty streamlined and straightforward, but when you have a lot of water options when it comes to places like La Crosse, so you've got, Mississippi River pools 7, 8, and 9, the options that you choose from don't always work right. And I don't know if it's just like a web browser thing or whatever it might be. And so he just, he got back with me and clarified, all right, which pools are you wanting? What ramps are you using? That type of thing. And so like I sent him, email back, and I even included the map. I'm like, we've got all the launches that we're planning to use on there. Here's where we're going to meet up at Moxie's. We're not holding fish. It's just catch, photo, release, that type of thing. And like he came back, he's like, okay, thanks, great. I'll go ahead and prove it. And so, most of the time they're pretty easy to work with, and they're starting to get more familiar with the kayak tournaments because, they're used to a lot of like the big boat tournaments.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, So like when they see the catch, photo, release, they're like, what is that? I'm like, it's a kayak fishing tournament.
Yeah. I mean, so what would you say being on the other side of things is the hardest thing to kind of get done with as far as like the whole process of everything?
Sometimes it varies. Sometimes the biggest part is just, the waiting game, waiting for all the different trails and series to come out with their schedules, and then trying to plan around everybody else. It's just sometimes waiting to, configure everything with everybody can sometimes be a little trickery because, again, everybody's waiting on permits, everybody's waiting for other people to post their schedules and who's going to be on staff next year, that type of thing. So that's a little bit part of it. Everything else from there, though, is usually pretty streamlined. The biggest things that I would say as a tournament director that are the most difficult to deal with is sometimes when you have somebody who will not intentionally finding a loophole in the rules. As much as we try to scour through our own rules, other league rules, like KBF, Hobie, Bass, that type of thing, a lot of it is streamlined, but there are lots of other little nitty-gritty rules that each of these different clubs have that will vary from club to club to club. So, when you have competitors who compete in your event and they ask you this question that you hadn't even begin to think of, you're just like dumbfounded. You're like, holy crap, how did we not even think of that? It becomes a gray area in like a final decision. And so, those are sometimes the hardest to deal with because you're just like, well, it's legitimate what they're asking or what they're trying to do. And so most of the time, I'll consult with whoever else is on staff with me, and sometimes I might even reach out to somebody else in part of a bigger trail group, like maybe AJ from Hobie, or there's a couple of ladies I know who help judge for KBF, like Amanda Brannon. I'll be like, hey, I have never gotten this question before. What do you guys do for it? And what's the reasoning behind it? I'm not just going to make a blind decision and a blind reason for something. There's always a reason why a certain rule or certain way that we have things is set up, and I think a lot of people will sometimes forget that, and the other part of the rules thing is dealing with anglers who don't read the rules. Sometimes it's just you just kind of shake your head. I also do the monthly nudes tournament with Paddle and Fin. And so kind of a basic rundown of that is it's an online month-long tournament for people who are new to the kayak fishing tournament scene. They have to have only been in the scene for a year or maybe a year and a half. And it's all on Tourney X. And you have the whole month to fish and submit everything. And right on the registration page, everything's pretty laid out. It's like, all right, hey, or what? Paddle and Fin is hosting the Paddle and Fin's nude tournament for those who are new into it. When? I've got the dates in there. Where? Any public body of water. How? It's like, okay, yeah, you've got to have a catch board. What is a catch board? It's not the boards that you can buy at Walmart or Bass Pro or, that type of thing. If you're not sure here, go look at this link. Rules. Here's the link to our rules. Go read them, and then other little details. And then we'll get into specifics about the identifier and how it's released on the Facebook page and all that other stuff. And probably the last 3 months for the noobs tournament, I've had a new person get on there and submit fish, and they use the Tourney X identifier code, and I'll deny it, and I'll say, incorrect identifier, please read the Tourney X registration rules. Lo and behold, I'll get an email from them, shortly after, hey, this fish got denied. I was using the identifier Tourney X gave me. Can you clarify? And I just kind of sit there and I'm like, okay. So I'll screenshot, Tourney X and the rules, and I'll circle it in red. I was like, please advise, this is what the registration says on Tourney X. Please, visit the Facebook page for more details. And most of the time they're like, oh yeah, I guess I should have read that, So sometimes, that can get, a little cumbersome and sometimes a little frustrating. But, again, at the same time, that's what we're all about, though, is like helping these people who are new in the tournament scene to pay attention to these details. Because if they're wanting to get up there and compete in these big leagues, such as Hobie, KBF, and Bass, they can't be doing this stuff, because those guys are going to shut them down right then and there. And they probably won't even acknowledge their questions or why the reason they have a denial. They just might come back with a response of read rules, or something like that.
Yeah.
They have hundreds of other competitors that they gotta, deal with and handle with. So, it's, sometimes the little things, but, yeah, definitely, rules and such like that. And then I'd say the last most kind of not really frustrating, but a not so pleasant thing to deal with is, of course, drama, as we like to call it. Whenever there's issues that are, whenever
there's always drama somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really quite ironic that, we're talking about TD stuff and everything, because the Hobie BOS series had day 2 of Pickwick. And for those that are out there, if you know of Kayak Bass Nation, I mean, I'm not going to preach or slam them or anything like that, but there was a fish where part of the identifier is just cut off. You can still make out what it says, but it's just cut off, and that picture was posted in there. And now there's a whole big debate on there about, is it breaking the rules? Because the rules state, identifier must be clearly legible or fully visible. To what extent of that rule needs to be elaborated on, because some people will say, well, the rule says it must be fully legible or fully visible. So does that mean none of it can be cut off in the picture, even if a tiny little quarter is cut off in the picture? Where's the gray area? Where does that end? Where's the black and white area end? So I was reading some of the comments in there, and I was just like, this is why I don't comment on Kayak Bass Nation thing, But I guess the good thing about the Nation is that it does bring up these issues and these concerns, and let alone cheaters too, because, we do need to keep a lookout for everybody for those too. But, it always has me, question everything. And when I'm judging a fish, if I see that maybe the mouth is open just a little bit, even if I'm just that's not enough to deduct or something like that. I'm like, this is all on Tourney X. Everybody else can look at these pictures. Who's going to go on here and look at this and say, oh yeah, that fish mouth was open. That should be a deduction type of thing. There is always going to be some other eyes looking at, the same tournament that you're running and looking over this and seeing if the judge and judges are doing their jobs. And, if there's a blatant error, which has happened in some of the big trails before, people are going to bring these up to light because they're going to wonder why, rules aren't being followed by not only the competitor, but by the judges as well. So it can get kind of messy in the process as well. But, and that's where a lot of the confrontation can kind of come into play too. An angler, may not have read a rule and they take their frustration out on, the judges and staff and everything, which, I get it. I've been in the position where I've made mistakes before and I've paid for them dearly, but at the end of the day, it's all about angler responsibility as well, because the rules are there for a reason. Whether or not I chose to read them fully and to understand them fully is all on me. If I would have had a question, I should have reached out and asked about it. But again, sometimes there are weird situations which happen like every year. I swear every year there's always some weird loophole that is found, which is, is fine. I get it. It helps us, learn and grow and improve as, directors to, help make everything run so much smoother and make things, more black and white in a sense, where there's no gray area or anything that is open for question or for interpretation per se too. So those would definitely be some very big, like the hardest things when it comes to judging.
Yeah.
A tournament director in a sense too.
Yeah. So what's a typical tournament director day from like start of the tournament till end of the tournament?
Yeah, it can definitely vary. So if you're a tournament director and you're on the scene at the site with, everybody else, it can vary, on your league. So I'll take Paddle and Fin and Kayak Bass League and, I'll kind of use the two. Whereas Kayak Bass League, I'm on staff with them and I also get to compete as a competitor. Whereas Paddle and Fin, I'm just the TD. I don't compete. And I kind of did that for a reason, just so that, in our beginning stages, I didn't want there to be like a perception of, well, there's unfairness because the TD is also competing, that type of thing, which I can see, people's points of view with that. But with Kayak Bass League, we will have a captain's meeting usually the night before, and we've had it in person, but then we've also live streamed it as well with COVID and everything. And, we'll make sure we review important rules, the time frame, remind people about catch boards, whatever identifier you're using, make sure it's in the photo. Making sure that you're not covering the fish's eye or touching the tail, or in Kayak Bass League, you can touch part of the tail. Again, like I said, all club series have different rules and stuff like that. So you just got to read the fine details. And then we just, kind of go out and go on our way and, fish. And with Kayak Bass League, sometimes, judges will have to come in early, because, there'll be people coming in early. If somebody has to leave early, we'll want to double check with them, make sure that they got off the water safely, depending on where the location of the tournament is held. And then we all have a meeting spot. And at Kayak Bass League, we actually do manual reviews. So everybody will bring their phone and we'll have their fish, and we'll have two people judging, and then we'll have a third person who will be like the final say if there's like something in question, or if you can't tell if like the tip of the tail is on the line or not on the line type of thing. That way there's just more than one person looking over those photos. It's kind of like a double check and a triple check, and everybody there can see us judging photos. So there's no question as to who is judging the photos and who would be seeing, their location, because that's another hot topic sometimes on Tourney X, is that TDs, they do have access to where those people have submitted fish, and then, might save those spots for later, give them away to other people. That's a whole other topic of debate later on. But, we take kind of all of that out of there, and it's just photos. And, having the identifier in there, having 3 people looking over the photos if need be, we're all right there. If anybody has questions, concerns, or if, somebody's like, oh yeah, they were fishing out of bounds over there or something like that, we're right there to kind of handle it. I mean, we try not to be confrontational about it, but, we usually say if anybody has any, discrepancy or question or whatever, they can let us know the day of, but with Kayak Bass League, we have the 24-hour period as well to review everything. And then if everything goes good, then, we'll judge everything. We'll tally everything up on the computer, and then we'll write up the big checks and hand out all the prizes, take pictures, say, hey, thanks for coming, and send everybody on their way. And then usually like the next day or two, we'll have like a little write-up after the 24-hour period has ended. And, we'll have pictures with the winners and their top fish and everything. And, do that 5 times over the course of, a couple of months.
Yeah.
Paddle and Fin was a little bit different this year. So, we tried to focus on the live streaming aspect of it. But again, cell service coverage on lakes and stuff isn't always the best. So that was a little bit challenging sometimes.
I know the river was probably the worst one.
Yeah.
The Tippecanoe River, because I lost service the second I dropped down into the river.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but Dale Hollow was really bad too. So like not only, being a tournament director, but being the judge, the primary judge for that too. Like sometimes, you're just like sitting there like, all right, are they going to upload anything? And then, because of, cell service, they come in, beforehand. And then all of a sudden it's like ding, 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 ding. All the photos are coming and you're like, oh, here we go. But kind of dealing with the challenges of the cell service, trying to live stream, trying to upload and everything. And then, also, I kind of forgot about this even with Kayak Bass League, but with Paddle and Fin as well, is sometimes even up until the night before or like early hours, the morning before, I'll make sure that my phone is always on because I'll get, questions at like 3:00 in the morning from somebody who might be driving in. They'll say, hey, listen, I missed the captain's meeting. I looked at the map, but I wasn't sure about this launch. Can you just let me know so that, I know that it's good? And, I'm more than happy to reach back and say, oh yeah, that's good type of thing. Or if somebody needs to get a hold of me for an emergency reason, that type of thing. So sometimes, it's taking a phone call late at night or early in the morning sometimes, or even during the tournament itself as well, which I've had happen as well. But then, with Paddle and Fin, so I, kind of go out there, try to get some footage, and then judging fish on the water too with my phone. And then coming in, finishing up, judging everything, wait to see if anybody has any, discrepancies, that type of thing that they need to submit. And, I'd say like 98% of the trail series went good without any issues. There was a little bit of some hiccups with the Cold Water Trail series because with their series, they had integrated the check-in and check-out feature with Tourney X. And we hadn't really talked about what rules we were going to integrate with the Northern Indiana Kayak Anglers, or was it the Southern Michigan? I get them mixed up now. We talked a little bit about, which rules we were going to integrate, but we didn't really specify that kind of specific detail, so that did actually become one of those kind of gray areas where it's just like, well, yeah, we didn't really have it necessarily listed in our rules that we used it, but we did say at the captain's meeting and listed in our rules that you had to be physically checked in at the check-in location by a certain time. Well, a lot of people interpret that as, well, yeah, I just had to be checked in on the Tourney X feature by that certain time. So, in those types of cases, as a tournament director, trying to figure out, okay, is that a automatic disqualification because, they didn't read our rules thoroughly, but yet we were a combo event with this other series. So they were going with our rules and the other series rules. So, sometimes those tricky situations can come up on you if you aren't, thinking about it ahead of time too, So, that was definitely, I think, one of the biggest issues that we had with the trail series. And then, turnout as well. Our last 2 events had to be canceled because we had one person sign up for the Fox River and we didn't have anybody sign up for Lake Erie, and as it being a first in its year series type of thing, we were glad to have the participation that we did, especially for Madison Chain and Coldwater, because, we had 30 plus for both of those.
Yeah.
And the Tippecanoe, I think we had 11, which wasn't too bad. I mean, weather kind of played an effect on that a little bit. But for, Fox River, I had heard kind of that a lot of people were talking about how low the river was and maybe it wasn't fishing that good. A lot of people, weren't really familiar with the river. There were some locals, but, whether or not it was going to be enough people at the end of the day. And then I want to say that there was another event going on that weekend, but I can't remember. Or no, it was the Lake Erie event. There was the Hobie event on lacrosse going on that same weekend. So,
there was also Great Lakes had an event that weekend too.
Yes, yeah. So again, we had those conflicting dates, and we had to make choices when we were setting our schedule. All right, who do we conflict with? What dates do we really try to go for? And, that type of thing. So, but yeah, it can be a lot of, different things. Like you might get a phone call when you're on the water and, somebody's saying, yep, I'm heading out. I flipped my kayak. I'm okay, but I'm heading home. And I'm like, wait, what? We've had that happen before. We're just like, what happened? Like, are you all right? Did a boat hit you? Did you just fall out? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Just tell me you flipped your kayak and now you're going home.
Yeah.
Like, come on now, So yeah, situations like that. And then, with my very first year of being a tournament director, probably had one of the worst experiences a tournament director and being on a staff of a series will ever have is the death of an angler. I think there's really only ever been one other big series that I know of that had that as well, unless there's been other ones that, might have just be a smaller trail that might have had a situation happen too. But in 2015, was it 15? Yes, 2015. I was on staff with the Great Lakes Kayak Fishing Series, and it was our final event, the salmon fishing event. And kayaker hadn't checked in by the deadline, and we started our initiation right after. We started looking around the parking lot. Checked out his car to make sure it was still in the parking lot. Went inside, asked around. Then we started asking people. Nobody had really seen him as of lately, but then we started asking people, when did you think you saw him last? And a lot of people had said, it looked like he was headed south, but he was pretty far south. We're like, okay, we've got a little bit of a point of reference. And the marina had a little boat that they had let 2 of our guys go out and just kind of cruise up and down. They went out for maybe 15, 20 minutes to go look around and didn't see anything. So before they even started coming back, they initiated Coast Guard because we knew at that point in time that something was very wrong. They had tried calling him, went straight to voicemail. So either his phone was dead or, whatever, that type of thing. So Coast Guard got initiated. They sent out their big boat. They even got the helicopter out. And I'd say it was probably maybe 15, 20 minutes later, we heard them come over the radio that they had retrieved him from the water and were starting CPR. And we kind of knew at that point that it wasn't going to be a good thing. So we still to this day, nobody knows exactly what happened. He had somehow fell off of his boat, flipped his boat, whatever it may have been, was in the water. He wasn't wearing a dry suit or anything like that. I think he was just wearing like a t-shirt, hoodie, and maybe some pants. You got to know that Lake Michigan that time of year, 60 degrees if you're lucky. And then it was a pretty chilly day. It was windy, and there were some waves as well. I think there was like 3 foot, and combination of that, and I think the air temps were maybe 50s, 60s. So we might have just been barely hitting that 120 rule, but that water temperature, like 5 minutes in that water, and you're going into hypothermia. So, and essentially that is what happened. He went hypothermic and, died from that. And they brought him back, and, pretty concealed and everything though. But one of the Coast Guard guys comes up to us, and he had a little thing in his hand, and he's just like, yeah, does anybody know about this device? And we're just like, no, what is it? He had it's called an Epirb. It's like a emergently personalized identifying something beacon or whatever. And when you activate it, it just automatically sends out a emergency signal within a 50-mile radius. And it's got like a really stupid bright light on it that'll flash. And it's supposed to alert Coast Guard and other stuff like that. And it was, I don't know if it had like a lever or a button, but it was obvious that he had pushed it or, activated it, but it failed. So that was like the hardest thing to take and realize that day, because it's just he had a tool that nobody else had. He activated to use it, and it didn't work. And that haunted me for quite a while after that.
Yeah.
And being, in that first year being in, kayak tournaments, it really made me stop and realize, okay, this is fun a lot of the time, but these types of situations, they can just happen, KBF, how many years ago has this been now? 4, 5, Rebekah Golden had died while out on the water. And I don't remember the exact details was that, but I know a couple of people, she hadn't checked in or anything like that. And a lot of people, and some people were asking where the last time that they saw her. And there were a couple of people that had kind of remembered where they had last seen her. And a few people went out, and I think 3 people had found her. I can't remember if it was in the water on shore. She had her PFD and everything on, so she was able to be found and retrieved. And same thing with the kid for the salmon fishing tournament. He had a PFD on, everything. He just, things happen.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing that a tournament director could go through, literally, is just dealing with the death of an angler, because that is the last thing you want to have happen. You're at much higher risk to get in a car accident than you are to drown. So, there's that whole aspect of it too. But, it's always it's always in the back of my mind, having safety, and I know a lot with these bigger tournaments, they have kind of gone away from having the required check-ins, if it's a multiple day tournament, that type of thing, which I can understand to a certain point, because, at the end of the day, we're all adults. If we're just wanting to leave, yeah, we should be able to just leave and not have to, check in per se type of thing. But coming from a small series that has had, some of these experiences, like at Crossroads, we had the guy who got ran over by a boat. If a tournament director wasn't necessarily on scene, or if you would have had 6 or 7 different lakes to choose from, the angler was lucky to, have us to come to and talk to, because he lost his phone and everything. So what was he kind of left to do if a tournament director hadn't been there? There was boats and stuff, but still, those are the things that still make me, kind of glad. And part of the reasons why we do have these mandatory check-ins, because it's not to punish anybody, but it's because, we want to make sure that A, everybody's off the water and safely off the water. And 2, if somebody isn't off the water, or if somebody hasn't checked in, we need to know why. Okay, did they just forget to let us know that they left early? Did their phone die and they just didn't tell anybody? Or did something bad happen? And we need to initiate search and rescue or whatever type of means. So, it is kind of, not necessarily high strung as it may be, but it's just, always one of those things that after you've had it happen to you, you don't want to have the chance for it to happen again. So, Yeah, always know that when you're looking through rules or, wondering why there's all these different things set in place, it may be because it's a state regulation. It might just be because it's a safety thing. And it might be because, there's been a cheater or something like that. The whole cut off tails, the whole bending of the boards, the whole cutting of the boards, there's been all these different things that have happened out there that have made us to change and implement all of these different rules and everything. So, it's not just because we're trying to make things difficult. It's just we're trying to be as fair and as consistent, as we can be as tournament directors. And it's, sometimes it's not always easy. I mean, especially for, newer anglers, because just like you want them to succeed, and then they will sometimes make rookie mistakes. Maybe they've got their hand just over the eye because they just, are in the rush of trying to hold the fish on there and everything. Or maybe they have the wrong board and just didn't realize it. It could be a number of different things with, newer anglers. So sometimes you just, even though you want to be helping them out more than anything, the biggest thing at the end of the day is having that consistency and having that fairness. If you're going to judge a fish one way for one person, you got to judge it the same way for everybody else, regardless.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, the mandatory check-in, it shouldn't be that big of an issue with anybody. Especially like for me, especially with the paddle and fin series, checking in and sticking around for the ceremony, everyone got something.
Right. Yeah. That too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's part of the experience. You paid the money for the tournament, whether you did good or not. It's part of the experience from start to finish.
Yeah.
Especially for me, because a lot of us are taking vacation days to go to these tournaments. So
right.
might as well get the most out of it. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, we know that at the end of the day, if somebody didn't do good at all, we totally get it. We totally understand if they want to leave and go home. We have made like a rule amendment too that is said in there. If somebody needs to leave, like, and it's kind of got to be for like a legitimate reason, like, a family emergency came up or, something, that type of thing. They're not just leaving just to leave. It doesn't necessarily forfeit them from winning prizes. Because, I mean, if somebody goes out there and catches, 98 inches and has to go home because maybe they got a sick kid or something like that, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to, like, DQ them or anything like that. Like, what would that be? They went out there and kicked everybody's butt. Why should I DQ them? Because, they couldn't make it to check-in. And again, there's that whole controversy of, well, if you do that for one person, you got to do it for everybody else. It's, at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I get it. But again, it's that whole of trying to incorporate the camaraderie, having the awards ceremony too for everything. And 3 with paddle and fin, where it's just like, okay, yeah, like, everything is said and done right there in that moment. So that's the final judgment of everything. So like your fish have been fully verified. Everything's been judged. This is what the final results are. So yeah, we need to get your pictures. We need to get you your prizes and all that other stuff. That way you can get on your merry way and already have your stuff ready to go and everything. So, and I know a lot of people travel a lot of different, travel thousands of different miles sometimes, going to tournament and everything. So, I think that's definitely one of those things that maybe we could try to at least change up a little bit in a sense. Because again, like I said, with like Hobie, they don't require, mandatory check-ins and stuff like that. But again, how are you going to have a award ceremony? But if you have the top 10 people stick around, usually can, but then again, with Hobie, you do have some people who just can't make it to the check-in. So that might be something we try to do a little bit differently for next year in a sense. But yeah, overall, I think it went pretty good though. Being in its first year, again, not having the numbers that we wish we could have had. And I think that's, what every club and trail series wants is to have, all these people sign up for it. But, sometimes it's just, the way that it happens. And we made sure that whoever did show up for the events that, we, went above and beyond, that we tried to make it the best, event that we could, especially when it came to like the live streaming and everything. And yeah, we had 4 people for our championship, and we still held it. We gave our AOI angler like a ton of prizes, and then our first place winner for the trail series and everything. So yeah, it's not that we're just gonna be like, all right, yeah, here's like $100, good job. We're like, no, yeah, like you get a full size check like you have in the background there.
Yeah.
Walk home with all this cool stuff, because, we want to make it more about the anglers and the experience that they're having.
Yeah, and I definitely seen that this year for sure. I feel it'll definitely grow in years to come,
Yeah.
But we'll end it. I want to end it on what's the most memorable moments of being a tournament director.
Ooh, most memorable. That is a good question. There's a lot of different moments out there. Man, the one that really sticks out to me though is when, so I'd been on Great Lakes for my second year, and it was my first year competing with Kayak Bass League, and it was like, I think October, that the staff from Kayak Bass League had reached out to me, and they're like, hey, you want to come and join the staff with us? You're pretty cool. I'm like, heck yeah, I do. That, and then like other moments, when people reach out to me to like, be a judge for an event or something like that, and I'm like, heck yeah, I will. It's just like I feel honored to have like that recognition and that oh gosh, what is the word I'm looking for? Reputation. There we go. I'm glad that I can be that reliable person that somebody can turn to and say, hey, can you judge this tournament for us this weekend? We ain't got nobody to do it. I'll do it for free. I don't care. Like I love judging fish. Like it's just like I do it all the time. It's like a second thing because like not only I like to see the fish that people are catching. Like I'm looking at it, and sometimes people are submitting, these 20-inch smallies, and I'm like, good God. So, getting to see some of the monster fish that people submit, I'll just sit there and I'll be like, oh, look at that. I'll show Adam all the time too, and I'm like, dear God, look at this fish. So those are definitely top moments, and then of course, when people, do shout outs and stuff to all the staff members too, we never ask for that type of stuff, we don't ask for anything special, and again, we aren't getting paid to do any of this. I'm not getting paid to do it for Paddle and Fin. I'm not getting paid to do it for Kayak Bass League. It's not something we do for free. It's all volunteers. So, it's not like we're out here to make a buck doing it, which we all wish we could. But, it's a service though, in a sense. And I love to do it, because I feel that, being the role that I am and what I strive for and the standards that I try to hold when it comes to being a tournament director is what I wish it would be like everywhere else. Like again, hot topic on KBN, the identifier. It's just like I can see everybody's point of view because being a tournament director, you have to look at that because what do the rules say in black and white? The identifier must be fully visible. All right, to what extent is that? Does that mean that like the bottom half can be cut off as like the little corner, or does the whole damn thing have to be in the picture, So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, well, I just want to say I appreciate you joining me.
You're welcome.
And and I appreciate everything you've done for, especially the Illinois area, being from Illinois.
Oh yeah.
I've been in pretty much every tournament series that you tournament directed. So
yeah, just about really.
Yeah. So
it's been a good year. So yeah.
Yeah.
Can't complain too much.
Yeah. It's been great. So we'll end it here. Again, appreciate it. Appreciate for joining.
Absolutely.
And I'll see you down the road for sure.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
You too.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_n_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_n_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com.